Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to this. Welcome to Lily. This is Lily. This is Max. And I'm Shannon. Welcome to a invitation to Money and Relationships, a Right Riches for You Access Consciousness specialty that I'm going to be facilitating with my husband, Max. And Lily is kind enough to add her beautiful energy, and she's going to be diving deep for everyone out there and asking the hard-hitting questions that everybody has about relationships, but nobody wants to say out loud. So we thought we would create some content for you guys to see what is this money and relationships thing, and is it something that you might want to add to your life?
Well, I don't know about you guys watching, but I have been waiting for this specific class for 1 year now. I think the first time you guys tapped into this energy was a year ago in a Right Riches intermediate class that I was translating. And that's the first time you said, Shannon, that, oh, that's actually going to be a specialty. And finally we are here. So how did we get so lucky? And yeah, let's dive into the dirty little questions no one dares to ask. So,
I love that.
when we are dating, how fast money can pop up as a question. Is the guy earning more than I do? Is he earning less? How do I even comprehend that? Who is supposed to pay for the first date? Who is supposed to pay for the second one? And so on and so on. Like, I have so much questions around this.
Yeah, which is, I think, probably a good thing. I think too often, I feel like we either deserve like some sort of like social humanitarian reward, or we need to be admitted to the insane asylum for wanting to facilitate this class, because it's the two absolute hardest areas in all of our lives, money and relationships. And when you put it together, it's like and obviously money, I mean, I think a lot of people know this, but if you don't, money is cited as the number one reason and grounds for divorce universally, worldwide. So
at least that's people's excuse.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I love what Lily was indicating. She's like, at what point do we actually get clear about money? Like, does it happen right at the beginning? And what if it was, I guess my point of view is like, in order for any relationship to have any longevity, there does have to be some sort of cooperation, consciousness, willingness, openness,
clarity
around money, since it now becomes a shared experience.
And before you guys go all down the path of like relationship, and this is how it has to be in relationship, first and foremost, you have to have those things with you, right? To make that easy in relationship. For us, it was a little bit like I had no fucking clue when we got together. I had no clarity in my universe. I had no money. I had like I was a mess, essentially. So I did it in tandem with us being in relationship. And Shannon actually helped me a lot with that. I mean, using the Access tools was essentially everything that made this work. But so you can have this, even if you're not looking for a relationship, like ask those questions of yourself is what I'm pointing at. Because that relationship with you is the primary relationship.
Yeah. And so it's like everything that comes up for you around money and talking about money or exposing yourself around money. Will you guys destroy and uncreate all that?
Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and puck, all nine shorts, boys, povads, and beyonds.
And relationships, and everything. You destroy and uncreate all that.
Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, puck, all nine shorts, boys, povads, and beyonds. And everything you decided money and relationships cannot be, will you destroy and uncreate all of that? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys, povads, and beyonds. Like everywhere where magic cannot be included with money and relationships, because all you've ever experienced, quote unquote, is like not that. Will you destroy and uncreate that?
Yeah.
Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys, povads, and beyonds.
So most of us learn how to be and do and function in relationships usually by observing and duplicating our parents, whether we like it or not, and we also learn how to deal with and function with money from our parents for the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, So it's like whatever your parents' points of view in relationship or your parents' points of view about money in that relationship were, in whatever infinitely varying dynamic that is, that tends to be the education or the example that we model our life experiences from. And if that is so, is that working for you? So with the Right Riches classes and with all of Access Consciousness, we're essentially utilizing these very dynamic, effective energy tools to change what you've made real and true that isn't working for you. So you destroy and uncreate, what you made real and true that isn't working for you, everywhere you're reacting to one or both of your parents' points of view in relationship and money. And that's, of course, multifaceted. And then comes the cool part, where you actually start learning how to function with money and deal with money within your relationships in a way that's honoring of you and hopefully stimulating and empowering of the other person. But in relationship, right when you're starting out up front, like you have to, where Lily started her question, which is like, when I first start dating somebody, like when can I ask them about money? And that's a valid question. And I play around a lot with this idea of like, what if instead of like, well, let me rephrase that. How many of you guys enter into a new love interest or romantic interest with a lot of hopes and dreams and fantasies about what you want it to be or what you want that person to be or the needs you want fulfilled, et cetera, et cetera? And that's not wrong, but does that ever lead to difficulty? So what if instead of having fantasy and romance as the dictating force in that choice for you, it was actually about choosing somebody that would contribute to the life that you wanted to create and choosing somebody who could work with you through all that life has in store? So really, what questions, if we're talking about like in a dating context, because obviously this topic spans from, dating, first date, second date, third date, all the way down the track to like 25, 35 years in marriage. But it also will touch on the relationships we have, the money that we deal with in the relationship with our families, our friends, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really all relationships. But obviously in a primary love match or a marriage or a partnership, if there is differing or conflicting points of view about money, that can lead to a lot of pain and suffering down the track. So what if we all had these like relationship resumes where we were brutally honest with ourselves when we were writing our resume? Like, these are my strong points. These are the parts of me that are like, this is what's great about me. This is what's,
these are the tough points.
This is difficult about me. This is like what I accelerate, and this is what I'm still working on.
And here's my expectations, and here's my this, and
here's all my
that.
Exactly. And here's my points of view about money. Right? So they could hand you their resume right up front, and you would know. You'd be like, oh, okay, so they hate money. Okay, is that really going to work? And then you have to say to the person, so like, how invested in maintaining your points of view about money are you? And if that person could be honest, then you would know. And I think it's about, I'm a big advocate of practicality in relationship, which I feel like is like so not sexy. But if anybody's been in any kind of relationship for longer than 3 years or even less, you'll probably will have learned how much relationship has to do with practicalities. And if you cannot cooperate on the practicalities of life, which money is one of them, it makes everything exponentially more difficult.
One part of practicality too, I would add, is like honesty. And it's not something we think about as being a practical element. So if you're honest with yourself first and foremost, then how much easier is that to then have a sense of anybody that's coming into your life and what you're actually asking for. The thing is with ask and receive, which is this primary element of consciousness, like we do receive what we ask for. So what are you actually asking for? This is a huge key, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're looking for a relationship, whether you're not looking for a relationship, but you're creating your life. So what are you actually asking for? And are you honest with yourself about that too?
Wow, can I just add something? Because it's so interesting. Recently, I made an ask, and you always get what you ask for, right? So I asked for guys to show up in my life who earn more money than me, Well, I got that, but I didn't see it coming that those people don't necessarily like money. They don't necessarily live well. And they actually get jealous of me, even though I make a little less money than they do, but I live much better than they do. I love money. And well, that kind of pisses people off. So be clear on what you ask for. That was my learning from the whole story. Yeah.
But isn't it cool how that ask and that choice created so much more awareness? And that's the key thing, is when we ask, is that it always creates more awareness. And now you're clearer, and now you have more awareness as well of what actually works and what you're looking for.
Totally.
Yeah, really cool. In regards to your original question too, I just want to add, it's really tricky to, like, how do you deal with that at the beginning? Because all of these other things that we're like talking around are such vital elements. Like when you're going on a first date and when you're looking at like what will work, it's these other questions that you ask of yourself that are so much more relevant than the questions that you ask of the person. Or once you get clear on that, that will then create so much more clarity about what that question is for that particular person in that moment. You know, it's never a blanket question for like all of the men that you date. It's always like, okay, what's the vibe here? It's looking at it in every 10-second increments. Like, what's the possibility here? And what question is required to have more awareness? Yeah. Shannon and I were having a conversation just beforehand about my degree of control, because it was coming up. And I discovered so much more about what I haven't been willing to be aware of in myself, of like how controlling I actually am. I knew I was very, very controlling, but then in these energetic ways, I discovered how controlling I am. And
which actually, if we're talking about money and relationships, it's like what I know that you experienced, and how many of you guys out there experienced somebody in your life being controlling in the relationship with you, using the vehicle of money to achieve that. And that can be, money is a really interesting thing where it can be used to do a lot of harm and really control, but it can also be used to really create and to generate a new reality and to change people's realities. And it becomes this life skill of, okay, how do I use money? How do I deal with money in this relationship? So dealing with money doesn't just mean you provide. When I say dealing with money, I mean including all of the ways in which money interacts with your lives. How do you deal with money in a way in which expands your world, honors the other person, you don't give yourself up, you don't hurt yourself for the money or the relationship? And what choices can you make with money that expand both of your lives? And so that's really the place where that I had to get to, because in the beginning, Max came to the relation, and I'll just give our relationship as an example for, I believe many people can relate to that or start to see some of their own experience in it. It's like Max came to the relationship with his own money and relationship baggage, right? The relationship that he had with his with his parents, and how money was used within that family to control.
That's it.
To control. And he was also in a marriage before we got together, so there was also the experience of how money was used in that relationship. And then I came also to the relationship as an adult with my own experience of money and relationship. And I noticed sort of early on how I was having a massive amount of resentment about having to pay for things. Max is this and Max is that, and all this stuff around money. And I remember talking to my dad one day. My dad is Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness. And he's been a wonderful life advisor.
He's one of the reasons this relationship works.
Exactly.
For many years at the beginning, if we didn't have him, we wouldn't be together.
We sort of joke around, there's only 3 of us in this relationship. Thank goodness. But I was complaining to him, and I was really trying to work through this energy that was ultimately going to lead to making Max wrong and having to create separation, and ultimately like separating. And I knew that that's not what I wanted to do, but I had so much charge around it. And basically, well, Gary's my stepfather. I should clarify that because here comes mention of the other father. I've got two fathers. He said, well, yeah, it's like, how much are you being your dad? My biological father. And I hated that indication, but I looked at it and I was like, wow, I was literally thinking the exact same things about Max that my dad said to me growing up all my life. That, you know, I was a financial burden and why did he have to pay for stuff for me? Which is stuff that was verbally delivered at me. How many of you guys experienced some sort of financial abuse at the hand of someone that loved you or that said they loved you or that you really, really loved, that just started this really deep twist of how the energy could flow in your relationships around money? Fast forward to me, you know, I guess I was in my early 30s when I was going through this, and my stepfather indicated to me how much you're being your father. And I was like, whoa. And it hit me like right between the eyes. If I carried on in this way with this attitude and with this energy of resentment, I was going to destroy my relationship. And I really had to look at it right there. Right there and right then is when I chose, okay, you know what? I am never going to make money the issue in this relationship. I will not use money to do harm. And so I think that was a big choice and change of direction. But I think it really like boils down to like the choice that we make. And are you aware of if you're doing harm to yourself and in the relationship with your points of view around money? And then do you have the sort of capability, the wherewithal, the interest to make different choices, to create a different life and future for yourself? Big stuff.
Big choices. Big choices.
So Lily, you spat off quite a few questions before we started recording, and we've addressed one of them. Do you want to pop some of your other questions out? Because I actually thought they were pretty cool and quite relevant.
You've fried my brain so much. I'm like, what were my questions? I'm loving this conversation. It's amazing. And like, even just the idea of like, yes, using money to harm ourselves or the other one, it can be so innate that we don't actually realize that we are functioning from that. I'm like literally scanning my past and I'm like, wow, yeah, I did that. Oh, I did that too. Oh my goodness. So it's already giving me a lot of awareness. I think the question I was proposing earlier is like, what happens when, let's say, in this traditional society, the woman earns significantly much more money than the guy does, and the guy has issues with that, you know, spinning up, essentially arguments all the time, fighting the woman, trying to, you know, be the provider, but he's financially not capable of doing so. How can someone actually turn that into empowerment and nurturing instead of the fighting?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because that's totally our case. Like Shannon earns a whole lot more money than I do.
But I like earn a whole lot more money than most people, just to be clear. Like let's just Max, like if I am particularly gifted in this one area. I just need to make that caveat, not to like toot my own horn, but also to just create more of a broad vantage point.
It's a very good indication. So it was difficult for me too. I grew up in a very traditional family and the traditional roles is the man is the provider and the woman is the housekeeper and all that sort of stuff. I already had, but we started off from like a very different place anyways. Like I already had 2 kids and Shannon was making money. She was like a gypsy going around the world, you know, traveling, living her life to the best. And then we sort of came together and it was this real change point.
Well,
for both of us.
So how have you dealt with it?
So dealing with that has been a process. But
yes,
for me,
I'm curious. Do tell.
Yeah. For me, there was a willingness to have something different. And what I really loved about Shannon was her difference, was her honesty, her pragmatic way of being as well in relationship and in life. And so that was greater for me than the willingness to like uphold this traditional thing of like me being the provider and what that means and then that structure and position that gives me. So it was this real process of using the Access tools and destroying and uncreating everywhere where I've bought that and everything that's not my point of view because I had bought so much and so many people have that point of view. Like the men, there's this pride and there's this thing and there's this identification as a man to be that. So I had to, and I spoke to Gary about this a number of times too in those early years, and he kept asking me the questions. Okay, so what is valuable about you? He goes, are you valuable because you have kids? Are you valuable because you have a dick? Are you valuable because this? And I had to really look at, okay, what is my value for me, not for the relationship or for her or for anybody else.
Right, because if money couldn't be the value, like what
exactly.
is your value?
If I couldn't have that identification of money being the value, what is actually my value? So for me, I had to really look at that, and that's so first and foremost, there has to be a willingness of someone to look at that and be willing to have something different than what generally said should be. And then question, like, what is actually valuable about me if it's not this thing that I've decided it should be or bought that it should be?
What is valuable about you?
Well, for me, I've discovered there's a lot of different things. My healing ability is one of those things. Yeah. It's just, and it's not even just with my hands, it's like a general...
Max is a healer.
Make people...
We're doing a checklist. Okay, what else is valuable about you? Healer, check.
Kindness is another element.
Check.
Like it's taken me quite some years to recognize, oh, I am not these other things that I thought I was. And that I'm different, like really fucking different. I thought I was always trying to fit in and trying to be like other people. And then I realized I'm just really, over some time, realized I'm really different, and that's cool. And that's actually been such a gift because it's really actually exciting to discover what is my difference and
that is
what is relevant to me and what is value in that.
And it's, if I might say something else in a slightly different direction.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to finish that.
There's other things too, but please. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting where you started this question or this perspective from Lily, where you talk about in a traditional society. And I think if we really look at it right now, the people of our generation, obviously you're younger than Max and I, but I would say my generation and even my mother's generation was already deviating from a traditional society.
Some of them.
In a really big way. And I also believe that we are the way that gender roles have worked in society, we're in a deep transformation of that. And that women are becoming the leaders. The future is really, the women are not only allowed to be leaders in ways that they never were before, but it's changing a lot of the financial flows, especially in relationships and especially in a lot of humanoid relationships, where you're having women who are really the leaders and the visionaries of the financial welfare of the relationship in ways that really women were not allowed to do historically. And it's not that they weren't allowed to, therefore they didn't, but it is also a lot of they weren't allowed to, therefore they didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't supported.
Yeah, or they were completely prevented from it. And sometimes women in families might have actually had more financial acumen naturally. In England, there's a lot of old money, obviously, and there's a lot of huge estates that go into, I can't remember the word they use, but basically like the family runs out of money. But traditionally, as we know, money and inheritance was passed down to the male heirs. And not in all of those cases, if there was a female heir that was more financial aptitude, could that family had sustained their wealth and grown their wealth more dynamically? So I think that we do a lot of damage to financial possibility with gender judgments. And as a high earning female, I am, number one, fucking proud of myself, but also really grateful that Max supports me in achieving everything that I can. And I know there's been moments of insecurity for you and moments of resentment for me, but ultimately what we've gotten to through the tools of access and our own choosing is to really develop the best of what we can offer to the relationship and to cooperate with what it is that we can bring. Like, money is pretty easy for me, but there's things that Max brings that aren't easy for me, like patience. And I mean that literally. So it's like you have to, in order for a relationship to work, I think one of the cool tools of Right Riches for you is to remove money as the reason or justification for anything that's going on. So if money wasn't the issue, right? So if you look at your relationship or any relationship that you've had a financial conflict or difficulty in, and you really ask yourself the question, okay, so if money wasn't the problem, if that wasn't about money, like what is this?
And this is a tool that we've used so many times because it's so easy to get worked up and make money the point.
Never the money. It's never about the money.
Literally
it's never about the money.
There's always a choice, a point of view, something you've bought, something you're aware of, something that is actually relevant.
That you might not have the wherewithal to know how to deal with. So you sort of weaponize and use money to like try to create some either change or separation or wrongness or rightness or power over or
it just seems more relatable.
Yeah.
In some ways.
But really, if you ask yourself if money wasn't the problem, if this wasn't about money, like what is this? Yeah. I don't know, for me a lot down the track, it's been about not valuing me, sort of similar to what you have gone through, like not valuing me, and also not being willing to be greater. Like a lot of times I'll use money as a justification for not being greater myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay for that. Why doesn't he pay for that? Well, if I was being an infinite being, what would I choose? Well, I would just choose to make this easy.
Yeah. And people use money as an excuse to create separation as well. So it's basically like if they have this we all have like some degree of comfortable distance. Like you don't want to be too far away from somebody or other people, and you don't want to be too close. So there's this narrow range, which we call comfortable distance in the middle. And then if things veer outside of that, like you get too close in a relationship with somebody or with yourself, then you use money as this thing to create the separation and to get back into comfortable distance. So there's all these different mechanisms that we use. And the thing is to really just acknowledge that and destroy and uncreate it. Like you don't have to know why and all of the drama sort of stuff that people tend to do around it. It's just a different choice then.
Yeah, and I think to be practical again, it's like you have to, if you're gonna create a relationship with somebody and like if somebody will not talk to you about money, that's information. You know, like that's actually, they're giving you information.
And you're going to get so much, even if you just ask a question about money, you will get so much information before they say anything.
And in Max and I's case, like we didn't really know how to talk about and cooperate with money in the beginning, but it's something we learned over time. But there was, I believe, an overarching thread that ran from the beginning, which was that we got together to change. It wasn't about fulfilling a need or fitting into a family structure. In fact, it was the opposite of that. It's like everyone was like, you guys being together is destroying our lives. And we were like, all right.
I was like, no, you guys are doing a pretty good job at that yourselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness. And I'm keep wondering truly what would it take to, instead of weaponizing money against ourselves and each other. Oh my God, I cannot wait for this class. Are we going to learn how to actually use it for us to create a greater future and a more nurturing relationship? Is that part of the class? Please tell me it's part of the class. I'm so looking forward. Oh, wow.
Well, you have to, I think to say that, because it's a 3-part class. So there's, what is it? 3, 4, 4.5, 5, 6, 4.5 hours of class time where what I'm going to intend to do a lot is to actually share the practical tools that we've used and that I know work for money and relationships. Because sometimes it's really just about the tools. And then there's this whole other part where you really have to work on yourself and be brutally honest with yourself about money and what money is for in that relationship. And sort of like, who's going to be responsible for, is one of you going to be responsible for earning money? Are both of you going to earn money? If you're both earning money, does that go into a joint account? Do you share that money? Do you guys have your own accounts? Like, oh, this is the thing actually that I was wanting to say earlier, is that every relationship is completely unique. Although it seems like there's a term relationship that it should mean one thing, it doesn't. Every relationship is completely unique. The combination of every two people is a completely different energetic expression.
Yeah.
And even if you put Max or I with another person, we would create a completely different relationship because the two elements have changed. So every relationship is totally unique. And I really would love for people to give themselves permission to discover what works for them in the relationship, because what works for you two doesn't have to work for anybody else, but it really has to work for you guys. And I know too often people are trying to make somebody else right that's outside the relationship, or make somebody else wrong that's inside the relationship, which doesn't really lead to a creationship. It leads to divorce.
Of them and probably you as well.
Yeah. So it's pretty deep stuff. I mean, really, when I say like we're crazy for facilitating this topic, like I'm not really joking. I'm joking, but I'm not like totally joking. I just want to warn people of the magnitude of the undertaking. Or not. I mean, maybe this is just something
But the thing is too, like this class, if you're looking to like solve problems or get an answer, you're probably coming to the wrong place. This is like a beginning of something different. If you're into having something different in this area, those areas, then this is a beginning. Like you actually have to take the tools away and use them and use them and use them, and you develop like a wine over time. Like you have to ferment with terrible cliche.
Actually, I thought that was really...
I love it.
Well, I think it's accurate, exactly. That's sort of what's more relevant. But it's like you really, as Lily knows, she's a Right Riches facilitator as well. She's a Talk to Entities facilitator, Access facilitator. You know, she does all these things because
she's a hot babe. She's got a lot going for her. She needs 5 rich boyfriends. One rich one, one fun one.
That was good.
Oh my God, I love the list.
Yeah, so she knows that this is a continuing process, and I'm from having like spoken to her a number of times about her journey with Talk to the Entities, with Right Riches, like both of those areas, and that's just mentioning those two, have changed dynamically in her life, and she's still interested in something more with money and relationships. So it's this continuing possibility, and using the tools and having more awareness and being the question, and like you discovering more of what's true for you. So these 3 calls are sort of like a beginning or a middle or a whatever for greater, essentially.
And there'll be a lot of processing initially of like all the stuff you bought about money in your first primary relationships, which was with your parents.
Love it. I'm especially excited that we are getting tools, as you guys said. Like, we so often want to change things in our lives, in our relationships, and with the arguments, but we just don't have the tools to do so.
Yeah.
So, wow.
So my free tool for this was, if money wasn't the problem, like what is this that is actually going on? Do you have a tool one of the tools that you've used a lot to share?
Well, one tool that I've used a lot, I mean, we haven't really spoken about this directly, but is like the 10% account. Like this is huge. This has created so much for me, is actually taking 10% of the money, my income, and putting it aside as my 10% account, and growing that, and having that, like never spending it. I have spent it in the past, and then all my like income was like this and went down. A lot of people have that experience as well. But literally nurturing that has created this thing around money, since we're talking about money and relationships, in my life, which then has really impacted the relationship as well, of having, because I came from like not having, not wanting to have, wanting to get rid of stuff like hardcore at the beginning. So it's something, this one choice, continuous choice, has really added to what we can have as well, even though it's not direct, but it does really create that difference. So that's one tool that I just want to, like, you guys might know it already from a foundation class even, but it's very powerful.
What are the prerequisites for this class? Can you remind me? Is it bars or foundation or none?
That is a great question. Maybe someone will write it in the comments.
Here, I can look. I'm going to look.
Because now you mentioned tools from the foundation class, I'm just wondering, what are people coming in with to the class?
We are finding out. 3, 2, 1.
Prerequisites, foundation, and Right Riches for You beginning. I didn't realize.
Ooh.
The bar is high.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is it though? Is it? Yeah, and actually I'm realizing too, like with those prerequisites, you'll have some people have so many more of the foundational tools to deal with money. And so foundation is the Access Consciousness Foundation class. That's a 4-day class.
3.5.
That's a 3.5-day class that is actually amazing. And then Right Riches for You beginning is the introduction or the beginning Right Riches class that has a manual and is full of the tools of Right Riches for You, which are necessary to create your own financial freedom and sanity and ease. So then once you have those two things, then we can talk about money in relationships, which...
Yeah. On the note of foundation, tomorrow starts the Global Foundation here in Prague. We're in Prague right now. So Gary and Dane are facilitating the Global Foundation class, which happens annually. Huge, massive, amazing. Can't wait.
Cool.
Well, then let's get down to business. When is the class starting? Is it May 12th, 13, and 14, correct?
Tough questions, Lily. Yeah.
Oh my God,
I saw some people putting Beata put the link to the class in the chat, but I don't know where. I think that's on Facebook. Starting on the 12th,
12th of this month and 3 consecutive days. 12, 13, 14.
Amazing. Thank you guys for being here with me.
Thank you so much, Lily.
Everyone listening. Hopefully we will see everyone in class, right? Because this is going to be amazing. Oh my God.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.